right, greetings from Orlando, Florida today, where I'm in the clubhouse of this beautiful Airbnb that I'm at today. And if you are watching this engaging virtual meeting podcast live, do us a favor, hit the subscribe, like, and share button, and let other people know. We've got some cool interviews today. Today, I'm going to bring in one of my friends from the Pinnacle Performance Elite Mastermind. I got a chance to meet this guy. He's the mind behind a company called Vertical Alliance. He's a voracious learner, entrepreneur, dedicated leader. This guy never backs down from a challenge. And better yet, one of those top things he's doing right now is using innovative training technologies to put safer truck drivers on the road. Please, let's welcome to the show the one and only Jay Womack. Hey, Jay, how you doing?
John, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today. I appreciate it. Everything's looking good.
No. Thank you. Now, you're joining us from Texas today, I believe?
Yes, Texas, and it's unusually cold in Texas right now. It's about 28 degrees outside. So, and I see you in your flowery shirt. You're about to head to the Caribbean, I believe.
Yes, I've got, let's see on my list, Jamaica, Grand Cayman, and the Dominican Republic. And I look forward to wearing all short sleeve and shorts for at least a week.
I don't blame you. Don't blame you one bit.
I heard Nashville was 5 degrees this week. Did you hear that?
I have not heard that, but I'm
Oh,
glad I'm in 28 and not five.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, cool, Jay. So, Jay, I'm so glad we got a chance to know each other through our good friend Jay Abraham and a few others. And Jay's gotten a chance to see my hybrid work through that program, and so we got a chance to meet together. And so we got a chance. I offered I wanted a podcast. These are some of the most interesting entrepreneurs that you're going to meet, and so that's what we're going to do today. So, Jay, for my friends who haven't gotten a chance to meet you like I have, why don't you take a moment and let us know who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm Jay Womack. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was actually a teenager. Uh, Second company was a dirt car racetrack. I've had tie mills, railroad ties, worked in real estate, things of that nature. But the company I have right now, we started in 1999. It is a web-based training company. I saw the trend of technology emerging in the 90s and looked at it. And I was one of those guys that thought, hey, let's go get rich quick, which you and I both know just never happens, or at least it hadn't happened here. It took me a long time to build up the company. But in 1999, I started a company and we do web-based training. We train blue collar workers via the internet, and then we document that training. We document it with testing, and then we keep all of the records of that training, and we create a safer workforce, a more efficient workforce. And then we document the training in case they ever get in lawsuits. We can walk in courtrooms and use that to mitigate damages against companies.
Excellent. And so, how did you get into this business?
That is a good question. I got into this business in 1992. I was a stockbroker, and I read a book by a guy named Harry Dent. And Harry wrote a book called The Great Boom Ahead. And I remember reading it, and I remember how fanciful I thought that book was. And I thought, there's no way. This guy has written this book, and he's forecasted all these things that are supposed to happen in the next 20 years. And there is no way anyone could be this accurate. And I started watching his forecast, and it seems like every 6 months, something he had forecasted came to pass. And so I started looking at it and reading it, and I really studied it. And I thought, okay, so he had this trend of technology, a demographic trend, trends of technology, where the internet was going to go and what the country was going to look like in 20 years. And so I thought, if I believe what I'm reading, and I did at the time, then I need to start an internet company, an internet-based company that teaches real business how to be more efficient with what they're doing with technology. And that's what we did. We started it with that simple concept of how do we get a company, how do we take technology and have companies be more efficient in what they're doing. One of our first projects was a company that sent out $250,000 every quarter worth of prospectuses to their investors and
Mhm.
updates and stockholder information. And the first thing we did was we got rid of 90% of their paper and ink and put it on the internet. That's how far back it was. That's how long ago it was. So we were able to use email back then and do that. And that ever since then, it's just been an explosion of what we're doing.
Wow, interesting. So, yeah, so you kind of took these core themes, right? Technology, let's be more efficient. And so did that efficiency thing, is that like something you started when you were younger? Like some people talk about their primary question or their core question. Usually it's a question that people ask over and over and over. For instance, Tony Robbins is like, how can I make it better? So, Jay, is this something that started earlier or did it develop later in life?
No, it really developed later in life. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My family's always been in some type of business, and we sat around the dining room table as kids growing up, and I've got two brothers and sisters, and the six of us in the family, parents and two brothers and sisters, we literally sit around the dining room table every night and talk about business and what's going to happen and how could you do it, and how could you do it better, and how could you improve on this process, or how would you get more sales out of this company, or what expenses would you cut. I remember one of my first jobs was, well, one of my first career jobs was working at a bank. And
Mhm.
we brought in, at the time, we brought in a company, and I'm not even sure if the company still exists today. It was years ago, 1978 to 1980, and it was a company called Bank Systems Analyst. And banks back then, they prided themselves on 2% return on assets. In other words, if you had $100 million in deposits, if you were making $2 million, you were a well-run bank, and that was kind of the top of the food chain. And I remember the bank I was working with at the time was doing about 0.78% return on asset. And we were about a $150 million bank. And I was brand new on the totem pole, and they brought in a consulting company. And the company charged, at the time it was exorbitant. They charged $1,500 a day, and they stayed there for 6 months. Four CFO types came in and they analyzed every department. Make a long story short, we took their information, optimized the bank, and turned it from 0.78 to a little over 1.5% return on assets in less than 6 months.
Oh.
So efficiency, trying to bring things to the table that help a value chain, help improve a value chain and optimize a value chain have always been of interest, because that's really where you can improve departments, turn things around, et cetera. I mean, I can give you an example right now. In our own company, we've taken our pipeline from last year to this year. We looked at the first 2 months of 2024 versus the first 2 months of 2025, and we've already tripled our pipeline exposure right now. So, those are the types of things, and eventually you'll see that fall out in the bottom line. So that's those. It's always been fun doing that.
It's funny that dining room practice of debriefing, stuff like saying, what mistake do we make or how can we make this better is actually one of the top practices for teams. There actually is research on it. It's called self-facilitation. If you can get a team to self-facilitate itself, they can not only gain the gains from a professionally run team building event, but they can exceed that gains. And so it sounds really simple, but it's something that a lot of teams don't do. And so I just love that practice that it got down to the family part. Now you said your parents too were entrepreneurs. What kind of business were they on?
They were in the clothing business and ranching business, and then in the banking business. And I remember my father one time was I was 12 years old, and he used to drive beat up old cars, and we were he called me one day. He said, "Hey son," and he said, let's drive up here down the road." And I said, "Where are we going?" He said, "Well, I'm going to buy a controlling interest in a bank." And I said, I remember this. I was 12 years old, and I said, "Really?" I said, "You must be rich." I said, if you got so much money, how come you drive such a crummy car?" And he said, "Well, son, what would you rather drive? What would you rather have, a bank or a car?" Well, so, but he
I
was he
choose
was
bank.
he was an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. He loved doing things like that. He ended up doing a lot of real estate development. One of the first jobs I had was actually taking a piece of raw land and developing it into a subdivision. And it's all about conversion. It really is watching expenses. It's really trying to convert, look at your value chain. How do you improve? How can you improve that line item? And if you don't document, you can't improve. So you have to document everything you're doing. And we've taken that same concept of what we do now in training companies. When we walk into a company today, I mean, generally we walk in through the safety department, but we start at the C-suite, and the first thing we talk about is, if we can get behavioral change, if we can train behavioral change in your employees, which line item will have the biggest impact? And so we take a look at P&Ls and balance sheets, and we think in terms of how do we train against that. And generally, if you take, the old, I'm going to call it the Tim Ferriss concept of the 80-20 rule,
Mhm.
if you have a conversation and you have enough questions, if you really ask your prospects what they're thinking and what they're doing, I'll give you a quick story. 2 weeks ago, we ran across a company that is an underwriting company, and they have a niche industry. I'm not going to disclose the name of the companies and all that, but they have a niche industry. They've got just under $200 million in underwriting premiums annually. So it's as far as underwriting goes, it's kind of a small niche company. But they have, out of the premium that they charge, so let's say if for every dollar they charge, they have a loss reserve of 70 cents on the dollar. And one line item in the conversation, one line item cost them 82 to 84 cents of that 70 cents. And I said, so that one
Hmm.
line item, what is that? What is it? And he said, well, it's this XYZ accident. Well, that's an easy one to train against. So we targeted that particular line item. And so in about 3 weeks, we'll roll out 26, videos, 26 courses to address that one line item. And we'll sign those out every every 2 or so weeks for the next 52 weeks. Impact on that line. I think we move that line item by about 22%. So those are the types of things, but you have to have that background. You have to have it. You have to have a knowingness. You have to know what you're doing. You have to understand what you're bringing to the table, and you have to ask your prospect a lot of questions in order to know exactly where you're going to have the biggest bang for the buck.
Yeah, it's like consultative selling 101, Jay, right? It's like discovering and you don't know their business yet. So you do have to take the time to figure that out and that you can make I think this is great too in the training side, Jay, because the training industry occasionally has had the what do they call the smile sheet, which is the did I enjoy the training? But that doesn't, as a business owner, you don't in the end you don't care about that. You want to care what on the bottom line can I change with training? So what's one of the top tactics that you think training actually makes behavior change? Like what are one of the ways that you can make behavior change with training? Because a lot of people ask for that.
It is real simple, and it is so simple people want to ignore it. It is frequent and consistent training. Frequent and
Mm.
consistent. And I'll give you an
Okay.
example. The story we like to tell in one of our sales cycles is imagine you have a 15-year-old son, and this year's son, we're going to do things differently. And most people have either been a 15-year-old or they've dealt with a 15-year-old boy, and so this year's son, we're going to do it differently. This year on January the 1st, I want you to make your bed, yeah, brush your teeth, clean up the room, take the trash out, do all the things you're supposed to do, and I'll check back with you on December the 31st of this year, and we'll see how that worked out. And most people chuckle and laugh and go, well, that didn't. We'll take the opposite approach. We're going to remind that 15-year-old every single week, every 2 weeks, of what they're supposed to be doing. Very simple stuff, short, sweet, and to the point. Not a 30-minute class every week. Not literally. All you have to do is 2 to 4 minutes. Have an assignment test that goes along with it, so they're paying attention. We want them to be able to log on and log out within 10 minutes and do that. If we could do it 52 weeks out of the year for a specific line item, they'll see dramatic improvement on that. We've had award-winning clients that have come in and done that just 2 times.
Mm.
What that lends itself to, though, John, is nowadays everybody's trying the new toy, the new bell and whistle. So
Right.
gamification's come into play, and gamification is nice and that's entertaining, but that doesn't keep the attention long term. And
Mhm.
it really is just short, sweet, to the point, but know exactly what you're training against and then measure against that so you know if you're getting results.
Got it. Well, cool. Well, thank you for that. And it is repetition, repetition, repetition. It's like I think it's like fundamental skills in any kind of sports, right? So, well, let
It
me ask you,
really
Jay.
is.
So you're an entrepreneur and you're used to change. So I'm going to ask you about the world, the moment that the world changed. So what were you doing in March of 2020 before the world changed, and how did you adapt to it?
March of 2020. In February of 2020, I was sitting at an event in Idaho, and there were great speakers that were up there talking about, and some of them actually targeted what was going to happen in March of 2020.
Oh, you were at
But to
one of
make a long
those.
story short, I was at one of those, and quite
Yeah.
frankly, it was well. That's another. If you think about this, John, from the standpoint of success, what do successful people do? They hang out with other successful people. They try to raise their standard. They try to look at things a little bit differently. That's how you and I met. We
Yes.
we met in a group like that, and we still meet in groups like that. But in March of 2020, our complete world changed. We had three models of generating revenue for our company. And one was what we call our boot camp, and I can go into more detail if you want me to, but one was the website, and the other one was our SDR room, our sales development rep room. And two out of three of those revenue streams were shut down overnight. So we had to adapt, and
Hmm.
we had to adapt quickly. We didn't have any choice. I mean, you're talking to, I'm 67, so you're talking to a guy who's lived through Y2K, who's lived through the 2008, 2009 financial debacle. You name it, we lived through it. 1980. I'm old enough to remember the 1987 crash. I'm old enough to remember, the stock market being in the tank in the mid 70s. So, so we you have to adapt to those types of things, and you come up with the right attitude, you do thinking time, and you adapt. So what we did in March of 2020 is we adapted and we started looking at what are some other venues that we can use. So we revamped our website because that was a really good lead generation source for us. And sorry about that. I've got most videos. A lot of times consultants just tell you what you already know to do. They give you the courage to go do it.
Hmm.
We hired a consultant out of Washington State. He came in and looked at what we were doing, and we within 2 weeks we were doing emergency webinars to our industry on how do they deal with it, and it worked like champ. It completely put in that stop the bleeding and turn it around, and we had one of our best years in 2020 and 2021.
Yeah. See, and I think that's unusual. Most people didn't have that, but I did too. So Jay, you've heard my story and just that
Yeah.
having a bet like the COVID was like this huge opportunity I waited, over almost 30 years for, and you don't know when it's going to happen. But what I love to tell people, Jay, is I said I'm the best 38-year overnight success story you ever met, and I think that just gives us the basis of entrepreneurship is that you're always training, like it's not over, right? You're always searching for new information. I mean, that I think that's a so Jay, where does that come? Where does that lifelong learning piece come from? Is that your parents installed that or somebody else?
No, I think it was just sitting around the dining room table. I mean,
Mm,
at my core, if you've done a Tony Robbins deal, I'm a student teacher doing that, and I love to discover things, and I love to actually once you discover them, put them into place, and then share them. And
yes.
sharing those things helps you do that yourself. I'm impressed by your story, John, because quite frankly, you're making your livelihood out there on the speaking trail, and all of a sudden you can't travel. And look what you've done. You have bounced back in the biggest way possible with how you do your meetings and how you. No, I'm fascinated by it because I would think that most people in your position would just be devastated, but not you. You didn't. You turned it around.
I heard one of my friend's story, and she said, well, I lost 15. She said she lost 60 paid speaking gigs in that March of 2020. And she said it took her 3 months. This is a very resilient person, too. She's like military trained, but she said, she goes, I just took a break for 3 months to kind of figure out, like, she had to mourn the loss for 3 months and then finally figure out what to do once she said, like, I can't sit around anymore, right? I can't, like, I got to go do something. And so I'm just saying that thank you for that. I really truly appreciate that. So, well, that's great. I mean, Jay, it's cool to hear, that piece of story about how you transitioned from that. And here's the other part too. You asked for help. You asked for somebody who was Washington State, your consultant, to come in and look at your stuff. And sometimes this is the part we've been talking about with a lot of our leaders too. You got to ask for help. And a lot of people don't readily ask for help, either because they see it as a sign of weakness or something else. Like, have you seen this, Jay, sometimes either maybe with the people you work with or other leaders you've met?
Well, I do see that, and quite frankly, we try identifying the right people that will come into play and ask others and ask for opinions. Matter of fact, we have floor meetings every Friday morning with the entire company, and we're recording this on a Friday. And so this morning, the head of our sales department came in and he was on the floor, and we had our sales have increased for the last couple of years, and so he doesn't mind putting it out there, wearing his heart on his sleeve. And he said, "Look, our pipeline has tripled, the first quarter this year versus the first quarter of last year. But
Mhm.
we're having trouble getting it to drop out of the bottom of the pipeline. Does anybody have any ideas?" And so he asked the entire employee base. And what's
Mhm.
interesting when you do that, it's not we tend to think, oh well, so and so's on the front line, they're not going to know about sales and sales pipelines. You would be surprised how many people that are on the front lines have better ideas than your management team has. But the managers that ask, the managers that are not afraid to hire better than they are, the managers that will
Mhm.
do that are the ones that always go to the next level.
Mhm.
We did an experiment, and this is something every company, every particularly small company, everyone should do. We put together committees. We wanted to study three or four different things, and I put together subcommittees to go study these things and outlandish concepts and ideas.
Mhm.
And we didn't let any manager serve on those committees. And we had volunteers from the employee base. They came in and we came up with ideas and concepts that were outstanding, and we're executing on
Mhm.
them right now. So not all of them were good, but some were outstanding. And quite frankly, we've gone down the path of we wanted to figure out how we're going to put in gamification in our LMS system. And so we let a team, 5-year-old kids that play games all the time, that are technology just, yeah, geniuses. They came up with some ideas that were outstanding, and we're executing on those. IT departments already put them into place, and we're about to roll those out. So
Well,
you never know where ideas come from.
well, fun fact, Jay, right? I've got an extensive history inside of gamification because we were using gamification. Geez, we're up in 20-year mark now. And one of my friends runs a company called Sententia. Shout out to Monica Cornetti. And they also train gamification. They probably trained over 200 leaders or practitioners in gamification. So I'd love to see what you're doing with your system someday. Well, because I'm going to go see Jay, right? Jay and I are going to hang out in
Yeah,
Texas coming up here soon. So, Jay, let me move on to this next question here too. So, I know you're getting to your later stage of your career, but you're also a person, again, who loves to look towards the future as well as stay on top of what's going on. I want to know, what does Jay Womack see for the future of video and virtual meetings?
I think they're just going to get better and better. I mean, as you well know, you and I toured one of those facilities a couple of months ago that had the hologram, and
Yes.
we looked at buying one of those, and still haven't ruled it out to put that into one of our boot camps and take that on the road with us just for advancement in technology. We I come from the old school, so all this new technology, even though we're a technology company, I come from the old school, so everything is common sense driven to me.
Mhm.
In order to have entertaining, successful webinars, events, things of that nature, I've always thought it was content driven. You can have the bells and whistles and all those different things, but at the end of the day, it's the content people are looking for. Well, my generation, that's probably true. This new generation come along, they're looking for more entertainment value, more experiential marketing types of things. So that's one reason we wanted to talk to you, because you know how to create fun events. I mean, just look at your intro to this program. I mean, that's but I've seen the stuff that you do, and it's like, okay, we have to have some of that, because we have good webinars and we have good conversion rates on our events, but I bet they can be a lot better based on using your types of approach.
Oh yeah. One of the things is because look what we're competing with, Jay. You're competing with television and Netflix and Prime Video and even influencers. Like even the level of the quote unquote amateur has gotten so high now that people expect that. And if you also look, like today I was talking with an expert in short-term video, like even in 60 seconds, there's kind of some art and science about what you can do in that 60 seconds that get people to the next stage, which is like, I'll click the button or talk to you or want to know more information or even just build the relationship. Some people now are building relationships relationships over video before anything else happens. So I'm with you with that on that, Jay. And yeah, I look forward to us collaborating together and showing you a few of those things. What's one thing that you kind of want to implement on your side? So something you know you're not doing yet, but you is like on the list for 2025 that you want to do.
2025 that we want, golly, we have such a long list on 2025 that we want to do. The first thing I want to do is I believe video production. You touched on this a second ago. Video production is not going away. It's just going to get bigger and bigger and better. As a matter of fact, one of the thought leaders, and I hate to quote him personally on the podcast, I won't use his name, but one of the thought leaders that truly is a thought leader said 25 years ago, he said, have your kids go be programmers. And today he says, make them videographers and editors because the future is video. And
Yes.
so based on that, we've been talking to a name brand out in California about edutainment,
Mhm.
taking entertainment and putting education in entertainment videos and having interactive concepts and things of that nature. So that's our number one priority right now with what we're doing from that side of the industry.
Yeah, interesting. Well, cool. Well, thanks, Jay. Let's see. We're going to get into the special part of the interview. It's called the speed round. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and you have to attempt to answer them as fast as possible. Jay Womack, are you ready?
I may be ready.
Okay, here we go. In the speed round, your favorite truck.
Favorite truck? Well, right now it's a Ford F-250, but it's a Roush racing truck converted over. So that's what I'm driving right now.
Oh,
You'll get
fun
to see it, by
fact.
the way.
Yeah, fun fact, the F-150, I didn't know was a best-selling vehicle in all of America, right? I
So
didn't
that the
know.
F-150 is, this is an F-250. It'll haul more because we have a ranch and we have cattle and we have all that.
Okay, a truck driver you want to give a shout out to.
Brad Darnall, who is up in Wichita Falls, Texas, and he's colder than we are right now. But Brad is really he started out as a truck driver. He's now running all their safety, and he's one of the safest directors in the entire country. Wins awards all the time. Just a great guy. Knows how to deal with his people. Knows how to deal with his truck drivers, and knows how to run a really good safe fleet. And having over 4,000 clients, I can't really single him out, but I'm going to. But we have hundreds or thousands of others that are just as good as Brad. Close.
Outstanding. I know my friend Nancy O'Liddy, who's in charge of the Knit League, does Transportation League, will want to hear that. Okay, your favorite piece of technology.
My favorite piece of technology. Oh, that's a good question. Um, I think it's the driverless vehicles that we have. I've got a BMW that you just press the button, leave your hands on the steering wheel, and you can drive down the road. Now, I'm not going to tell anybody that is a safety guy that I read books driving down the road because I don't. But that technology is outstanding and it's amazing. And that's right now. If you ask me this question in an hour, I'll have a totally different answer for you.
Mm.
Probably something to do with airplanes. Yeah. And if you ask me in 2 days, it might be a rifle. In Texas, we like to shoot guns, so it might be a rifle that has a scope that literally you can tag it in and it'll hit a target almost 2 miles away.
Ooh,
So
wow.
technology is always changing.
Outstanding. I actually got to drive a Hyundai that had that piece of technology on it. And of course, I just came from San Francisco where the Waymo, literally no drivers are at. Okay, the next question. A company that you admire.
A company I admire. That's a good question. Actually, I'm going to go with a nonprofit, the Buck Institute. We toured the Buck Institute a couple of weeks ago, and the Buck Institute for Longevity in California, everyone there is passionate about what they're doing.
Mm.
They love their mission, and people that go and tour that facility turn into apostles of that facility. They become disciples. They preach it. And what their mission is really a good mission. Their mission is to increase health span among people. And I think that one resonates with me because we have so many truck drivers that we work with, and the life expectancy of a truck driver and the health span expectancy of a truck driver is so short and so low versus the general population.
Mm.
General population is 78 to 84 right now, and truck drivers is 61 to 65. And it is because of the stress, et cetera. And I'm
Hmm.
working with them right now, the Buck Institute, and Brian there, great guy. Brian is putting together, we're putting together a webinar and putting together training series to help those truck drivers extend their lifespan by 10 to 15 years and extend their health span by 15 to 25 years.
Wow.
So I think the Buck Institute in the San Francisco area.
Side note, one of the best parts of this mastermind that Jay and I are in are these field trips, right? And so for all of you who are listening to
Yeah.
this, one thing to think about is go visit a company and you'll be surprised how much you learn about a company, even if it's not in your business, especially if it's not in your business, if you go and visit it. So yeah, check that out. Thanks again. If you are in the Bay Area, go check out the Buck Institute. I'm just sad, Jay, that I missed that trip. But okay, here's the next one. PPE member you would like to give a shout out to?
Well, you naturally, of course, or Rob Castellini. Rob is pretty much the,
Oh,
the guy that has to go out there and beat the bushes trying to find people and try to find members. Rob does a heck of a job doing that. I mean, he brought us together.
he brought us together. And actually, fun fact, Jay, remember our speaker, Anna Liata, who spoke in Tiburon? Rob came back and said that Anna's book is the best book he's read in the last couple of years. Isn't that cool?
Is that right? That's great. She was talking about HR stuff, wasn't she?
She's talking about the generation. So how do we
That's
like get the
it.
different, right? Boomers,
Yeah.
Gen X, right?
Yeah.
Millennials, the different ways you need to work with each of the different generations. So shout out to
Yeah.
Ana
See,
Liata.
I categorize that in the HR category. So yeah, she was really entertaining. So,
Outstanding. Okay, last question. The best dinner at that dinner table that you've had at your family dinner table.
oh, the best dinner. My mother used to make the best smothered steak. And I
Mm.
mean, it is so tender, so flavorful, onion gravy. I mean, remember we're talking Texas, so you have that, you have the mashed potatoes on the side of it, and then after that, it doesn't really matter. There's always dessert as well. So yeah, I'm gonna tell you, this is interesting. If you're ever in a town called
Mhm,
Strawn, Texas, which is about an hour west of Fort Worth, Texas. Matter
mhm.
of fact, depending on when you show up in Texas, if you like chicken fried steak, they have the single best chicken fried steak in the United States. And it reminds me, Strong, Texas. The name of the place is called Mary's Kitchen or Mary's Cafe, one of those, but you can't miss it. Only restaurant in town.
Oh, well, if it's close enough to where you are, you're gonna have to take me there.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, last question here, Jay, if you could magically get people to remember one thing from this call, what would that one thing be?
Frequent and consistent training. Target your line items, target what you want. It's behavioral change. People discount the value of training, and you can't ever train enough. You cannot ever train enough. And, our motto around here is train to win. So do more training. If you
Outstanding.
want to improve
Jay,
your top and bottom line, if you want to do all those things, you've got to improve your training.
thank you, Jay. And especially at a time when people are downsizing, like right, marketing and training are sometimes the two first areas that get cut. But if you really want to be a leading edge company, like double down on your training at a time when nobody else is. And that's one of the ways you can ascend to be a leader in your industry. Right, Jay?
I'm going to end with this note, or I'll let you in how you want to. But I remember reading an article years ago about the Japanese when they were beating the Americans so badly. And I remember they had adapted the Deming model. I remember reading an article talking about they would spend 40% of the work week training their salespeople.
Mhm.
40% of the work week training their salespeople. And they were absolutely setting the world on fire. They were doing great things, and that always stuck with me. That's probably why I got into the training business. So,
Well, Jay, thank you so much for being a guest here on the Engaging Virtual Meeting podcast. And I look forward, of course, to seeing you at the next event. Or I'm going to see you in Texas, maybe even before that.
absolutely, look forward to it.
Outstanding. Thanks again, Jay.
Thank you, sir.
All right, let's see. So let's see. We've been visiting with Jay Womack, one of my friends here at the Performance Pinnacle Elite Mastermind. He is also the CEO at Vertical Alliance using training, and he just wants you to remember this one thing. And think about it this week. What are you training, right? What are you training yourself on? What are you training your team on? And think about what more do you want and train on that. So I hope you enjoyed this Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast, and we look forward to seeing you next time, well, when we have another one. See you next time.
Always start people and keep whole people. Show you